Hello and welcome everybody. Welcome to part 3 of our study skills series. You'll find this study skills video as well as the post up in our Google Classroom for the week of July 27th to July 31st. So this week we're going to be focusing on flashcards and using Quizlet. And the reason we're doing that is that these are two tools that you can use to help you remember what you've learned. You know, you're doing homework, you're going through these lessons that we do together. And let's say you do them one week, but then the next week when you go to think about it, it's all lost and you can't remember it. Or even the next day, you go to try and remember what you worked on the day before and it's just all gone. So that happens to everybody at one point or another. And what we're going to talk about today are some tips and techniques that you can use to help you remember things, to help you get all that stuff to stick in your head. So the two main things that we're going to focus on today are action and repetition. Learning is a process that requires action and repetition. One thing that you will hear about a lot if you look into study techniques or learning techniques is called active recall. Active recall is the opposite of passive learning. So passive learning is what you're doing if you are just sitting and listening to me talk during a lesson. That's passive learning. Passive learning is what you're doing if you're just sitting and reading something. So reading notes or reading a worksheet. Passive learning is also what you're doing if you are just reading a list of vocabulary words. So passive learning is when you're just reading or listening and you really aren't doing anything, you're just receiving information. Now, active recall is when you force your brain to remember or recall a piece of information. And that's really something that you want to start getting in the habit of doing when you are working on lessons, when you are working on assignments. One way that you can practice active recall is by using flashcards. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit. So another key technique or another important technique that you can use for helping you to remember what you've learned is called spaced repetition. Now, there's a lot that goes into spaced repetition. You can, if you Google spaced repetition, you'll find articles that go into a lot of detail about it. There's a lot of theory behind it. There's a lot of different approaches you can take to spaced repetition. But spaced repetition basically means that you want to continuously practice and continuously practice active recall of things you're trying to learn at increasingly spaced out intervals. So let me give you an example. Let's say you have a list of 15 words that you're trying to learn. So let's say I post those words on Monday, and on Monday you click on the link that I posted and you spend 15 minutes just reading through the words and then trying to do some active recall with the flashcards. So that's day one on Monday. Now, the next day, you would return to that same vocabulary list and practice those flashcards again. So one day later, you're practicing those flashcards again. And then let's say you get most of them right. You do a pretty good job. So then what you could do is maybe at the end of the week, go back to that vocabulary list and practice those flashcards again. And let's say you miss a few of them, so you're going to practice those a few more times. And let's say you get them all down, you would a couple days later go back to your vocabulary list and practice those flashcards again. So spaced repetition means essentially that you are practicing active recall of things you want to remember at spaced out times. So you start on Monday and then you do it again the next day, and then maybe you do it again on Friday, and then maybe you do it again a couple weeks later. That's the essence of spaced repetition. As I said, a lot more can go into it. You can get real detailed, real precise about how it works, but those are the basics. So I talked about both of these techniques, active recall and spaced repetition, with respect to flashcards. So flashcards are a method of learning where you put a word or idea or question on one side of a card, and then you put the definition or the explanation or the answer to your question on the other side. So two-sided thing. Flashcards could be physical, so you could have actual cards, actual pieces of paper or index cards, or they could be digital. So you could be using an app or a website that lets you make digital flashcards. You can also just use a piece of paper where you write down the list of words or ideas or questions on one side, and then you write down the corresponding definitions or explanations or answers on the other side. You can hide one side from yourself and do some active recall that way. So again, the idea behind flashcards is you are forcing your brain to do some active recall. You're not passively just reading information. So every week I have been posting a vocabulary list to our Google Classroom, and these lists contain important words related to the current week's lesson. The reason I post these lists is because I'm going to be using those words during the lesson, and I also want you to feel comfortable using those words to talk about your math work that you do. There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to use the same words that I do. So we're creating a shared language where we can communicate to each other about math. The lists that I post are hosted on Quizlet. The reason I use Quizlet is it's a free website and app that's specifically designed for creating and studying flashcards. So it's just set up really nicely and easily for that. It's easy for me to make those cards. So what we're gonna do next is we're gonna take a quick tour of Quizlet and see how to use it. So let me bring up Quizlet here. Okay, so let's say you have logged into our Google Classroom. Here's our Google Classroom. This is what you should see when you go into the classroom. I'm going to click on the classwork tab, which is pretty much always where you're going to go when you go into Google Classroom. And I can see all of the topics that are on here. So we've got our start here topic, and then we've got our current week topic second. So it's now the week of July 27th to July 31st. I'm going to click on vocabulary list and online learning links. And it says this week's topic is writing and solving linear equations. I've added this week's important words to our existing functions and equations list. Study this vocabulary list to learn the new words we'll be using this week. And then there's a link to the Quizlet page. So I'm going to click on that, and it's going to open up Quizlet in a new tab. And it's asking me if I want to sign into Quizlet with Google. So I'm going to sign in to Quizlet. Okay, so I've signed into Quizlet. I can see my account there, and I've signed into Quizlet using just like my student account. I'm not using my teacher account. So when you use Quizlet, it should look just like this or very similar on your computer. So it comes right here, and over on the, well, let's see, the top left-hand corner here, you can see the title of this vocabulary list. So right now you're looking at the functions and equations list that I've created. These are called study sets. So when I say vocabulary list, Quizlet calls them study sets. So this one is called functions and equations. And then over on the left-hand side here, you have options for studying these flashcards. So there's different like modes that you can go into to help you study these words. And then you can see there's also play. They have a few different games that you can play with these words if you want to try those. So I actually, I like to just leave the vocabulary list on this main screen here because what it does is it shows you the flashcards and you can click through them at your own pace. So I'm going to leave it just like this. And what I see here is I see the first word in the vocabulary list. If I click right here, if I click my flashcard, it's going to flip over and it's going to show me the definition of that word. If I click it again, it goes back to the word. So I can, right, this is just like if I had a card on the table in front of me, I could flip it back and forth. So that's the first word. And then I can see I'm on word 1 out of a total of 28. If I want to go to the next word, I click this arrow here that says view next card. So the next word is equation. We've got the definition of an equation, a mathematical statement that two things are equal. It uses numbers, variables, operations, and an equal sign. And then over on the left-hand side of the card, I just got an example picture or an example of an equation. Click it again, go back to the word. Function. Function is a special relation, blah, 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 blah. There's our definition. We have an example picture over on the left here. So if you were studying these, what you would do is you would look at the word variable and you would ask yourself, what is a variable? What does that word mean? You would try to explain it, try to remember it. And then once you've tried, you would flip over the card and see if you got it right. And if you got it wrong, that's okay. You're just going to repeat it to yourself a few times and then try it again in a little bit. Another way you can study these words is if you scroll down a little bit, you get to this list of words. So these are all of the words in the list. You've got the list over on, you've got the words over on the left-hand side here, and then you've got the definition in the middle and the picture over on the right. There's also some advertisements mixed in here. Make sure you don't click on the advertisements. That's just because it's a free site, so they make their money using the ads, but you don't need to click on them. So let's say you would like to write down all of these words. I think the easiest way to do that is to just scroll down to this list and write them all down here. You could write them down on a regular piece of paper, right, where on one column you've got the words and in the second column you've got the definitions. You can also click on this little speaker symbol here and it will read the word and the definition for you. So if you're not sure how to pronounce the word or if you're not sure how to pronounce words in the definition, you click on this little speaker symbol and it'll read it aloud. Some people, or many people also, they learn a little better if they're also able to listen at the same time that they read. So definitely use that option if you think it'll help you. So you've got the full list of words here. And when you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you can see other sets, so other word lists, other vocabulary lists that I've created. You can see MJAO0005 teacher, that's me. So I'm going to scroll up to the top here. Now you can also study the flashcards besides just on this home screen here, clicking through them, going through, click, click, click. You can also learn in these other modes. So if you go to learn, it says welcome to learn. Answer every term correctly twice to finish. So it gives me a definition here, a function in which the highest power of the input variable is 2. Graph is a curve called the parabola, and then we've got the example picture here. So I look at this and I see I've got some answer choices at the bottom here. Well, I wrote this list, so I happen to know what the answer is. I know the answer is a quadratic function, so I click that, correct. And now it moves on to the next one. So a special relation between an input variable and an output variable where there's exactly one output for each input. Now, let's say I'm not sure about this one. I'm gonna say solution. So it says study this one, and then it gives me the definition and the correct answer. So this is the definition of the word, and that's the definition for a function. I said solution, right? So I was wrong. And then press any key to continue. So the learn mode, I think, is a really nice way to, as it says, to learn the definitions and the words. So that's another thing you can do. So I would really focus on this home screen here for studying sets of flashcards. So you can click through them at the top here. You can scroll down and see the whole list. And then you can also work in the learn mode. If you start working in the learn mode, you'll see that in your list here, they start categorizing for you how you're doing with the words. So I just got this question correct in learn mode. So it's telling me that I'm doing really well with that one, but then this one I got wrong. So it's showing me that I need to spend some more time with this word. All right, guys, so I hope you found that helpful. If you do have any more questions about using Quizlet or studying vocabulary, please let me know. I've got plenty more tips and tricks that I can help you with. Do you know that Quizlet also is a free app you can put on your phone? So if you want to carry your flashcards around with you in your pocket, you can do that as well. I hope you all have a good rest of your week, and I will talk to you again soon. Take care.